going on, dudes? Back again on another Thursday, coming to you with some more randoms as always. Gonna take a moment to shout out a little happy birthday to none other than the guitar legend Slash. Now, if you don't know Slash, he is the man behind a little outfit called Guns N' Roses, and I don't think I need to introduce them at all. This is, of course, their classic tune, Sweet Child O' Mine. So I was gonna give you a little bit of info about the man Slash. He's a pretty infamous guitar player with that iconic top hat that apparently he had actually originally ripped off from a store called Retail Slut. And he got home and realized that it was kind of boring looking, so he slapped a belt around it, and there it is, man. That is the Slash look forever and always. Kind of cool. So I mean, Slash definitely got an early start, had a foot in the door of music pretty early on. His mother designed outfits for a number of artists, John Lennon, the Pointer Sisters, Diana Ross, and his father actually designed some album covers for both David Bowie, Neil Young, and I think a few more. And also, that being said, they lived just down the road from a man by the name of David Geffen of Geffen Records, and the folk rock heroine Joni Mitchell. So, I mean, the man was destined to become part of the music world, I think. Certainly, actually that tune, Sweet Child O' Mine, just as a little kind of side note, is very interesting to me. Quite an iconic little riff there. And it turns out that Slash one day was hanging out with the boys in GNR and just kind of practicing. And he had this sort of string skipping practice that he would do often. It was just sort of an exercise. And someone, I think maybe Izzy Stradlin, said, "Hey man, keep playing that. I like that." And he's like, "What? I'm just practicing." So he's like, "Keep playing it." And then, he busted out some magic chords to go along with it, and in come the drums. And then, of course, Axl on the vocals for one iconic tune there. So pretty cool. I like that story. It was kind of neat. I like when things come out of sort of flukes or, unexpected origins anyways. So, on and up, we're going to talk a little bit about Stradivarius. Now, if you don't know the word Stradivarius, I think most people are inclined to associate the term Stradivarius with some very infamous violins, and I will play a little snippet of some Stradivarius being played. Now, the world over, they are considered to be absolutely masterpieces in their craftsmanship and their sound and their tone. But I was going to talk perhaps a little bit about something else that came from Stradivari. The Antonin, I believe his name was Antonin Stradivari, was the creator of this instrument you're hearing right now. But little known is that he actually created some guitars as well, which I think was kind of cool. I didn't even realize that. I think there's about at least 4 of them surviving today. So there's not a lot of them out there, but I will play somebody playing a Stradivarius guitar so you can hear that tone. I believe it was strung somewhat different than the modern day guitar that we know of today. I think it only had 5 strings or something like that. And possibly matched matching strings to go with it, one octave different, much like the modern day 12 string. Anyways, quite a nice tone there. I was looking into stuff, and I had no idea that the man had actually created guitars as well. And so that got me looking at a few other people who dabbled with the guitar that I had no idea. First up, a man that you might know by the name of Schubert. Now, Schubert, famous for writing a number of symphonies, I think 9, and hundreds of other pieces, but he actually owned a couple of guitars himself. And I'll play a little Schubert for you here. This is a sonata of his. Much more what he's known for. He was a rather prolific music creator, composer, and he wrote a lot of stuff for piano as well. But one biographer has stated that he's pretty sure that the man used guitar to compose on when he was too broke to afford a piano. So, yeah, that I did not know. Interesting enough. Another old school chap, well known for all sorts of stuff, music included, but the man, Ben Franklin, one of the founding fathers, actually moonlighted as a guitar instructor. And he would play and teach a number of young women back in Philly. For some reason, at that point in time in our history, guitar was only really played by aristocracy, and in particular, women of the aristocracy. So, interesting enough that, now it's somewhat of a ubiquitous instrument that everyone plays, but at that point, it was mostly just women for some reason. So, I thought that was kind of weird. I did not know this. Mainly rich women as well, obviously. So, and by around 1750, the guitar had made its way across the pond over to jolly old England, and a lot of people did not like this trifling instrument. One commentator had said that they feared that this trifling and vulgar instrument, guitar is not vulgar, they feared that it was supplanting the harpsichord, which was the sort of most popular instrument at the time. So they saw the guitar as a, what shall we call it, an imposter that was going to ruin music. So interesting enough, eh? Anyways, I mentioned early on there Stradivarius, most known for the violins. And when I was diving into this, I'm just trying to cue something up here. I happened to stumble on an article about a town in Italy where I believe the Stradivarius instruments were originally created. So this little article I was reading was quite interesting. They had set out to preserve the sounds and the tones of this instrument in a recording theater of some sort in the center of the town. Now, they had to use super duper sensitive microphones and all kinds of things to pick up all the tones. Problem being, this is an old Italian village, and those microphones will pick up every single sound, including people driving by on the cobblestone roads, even a woman in stilettos walking by. These microphones were uber sensitive. So they pretty much told the town they required them to be on silent, for a good portion of January and February of 2019. And the people of the town complied. Everybody was like, okay. But they did set out a number of police to roam the streets and ensure that any noisemakers would go home, get out of there. They'd get shushed quickly. And one of the baristas in a coffee shop had talked about the very first day of silence that the town had taken on. She ended up dropping a mug of cafe au lait or something and smashed it on the floor. The entire cafe turns around and gives her the stink eye. Even a cop was like glaring at her, and she was completely mortified. She's like, of all the days, I have to do this now. Anyways, I believe they were successful. 70,000 residents in this town stayed utterly silent for a number of weeks so that they could get these recordings done. And they were going to utilize these tones in all sorts of ways in order to preserve them forever, as it were. So I thought that was kind of wild. Imagine getting a silent order here in London. I don't think we would be too successful, man. So yeah, I thought that was pretty cool, man. All right, I don't even know where my mind's at. Not sure where I'm moving to. Oh, yes, I do, in fact. Let's see, what shall I play for the introduction of this topic? How about a classic? A little bit of dueling banjos. Famous scene in a little movie called Deliverance. A little scary. If you don't know it, there's a particular little dueling banjo scene, and it's a classic. It really demonstrates the sound of the banjo. I love the banjo. For the most part, although many rock artists have utilized some banjo as an added layer to their songs, for the most part, I kind of associate this instrument with some southern bluegrass kind of hick music, right? And it turns out that the instrument came to us from not the greatest origins. It's actually used almost as a form of torture or bondage, if that could be said. Kind of a dark history, really. Turns out that banjos come to us from Africa. This I had no idea. During the slave trades, starting in the late 1600s, I think a lot of the captains were not exactly concerned about the livelihood of their slaves they were transporting from Africa to the U.S., but they were concerned with the mortality rates, as they wouldn't receive money if their stolen passengers did not arrive alive in North America. So a few different captains and slave traders had decided that getting these captives up to dance would be a good way to keep them vital and alive. And so they would force them to get up and dance every now and again. And I just think that's so twisted. But eventually, sometimes they weren't too motivated, weren't in the dancing mood, as they were being held captive. So they would, of course, flog people and all sorts of things to force them into it. But they discovered that, some of these poor slaves would be far more inclined to get up and dance if they were allowed to bring instruments with them. So they would often, when collecting these people in Africa, round up several instruments and then force these people to perform, and one of those instruments happened to be a banjo. I had no idea of the origins of the banjo, especially where, like I mentioned, where it's kind of associated with nowadays is more like southern, like bluegrass kind of stuff. I had no idea that it came from, so far away. So interesting, right? And that is how the banjo became transplanted here in North America. And over time, there was some traveling minstrel groups that would, sort of back in the 1830s, they would, for the most part, you wouldn't hear the banjo except on plantations where some of these slaves were allowed to, in their downtime, hang out and play a little music. But it was mostly ignored by white America until these minstrel groups showed up, and they would perform and often do some horrible caricatures of people in blackface and stuff like that. We don't really want to talk about that, you know what I'm saying? But anyway, that introduced it to the rest of America, and over time, it became a fixture in jazz music early on, old ragtime, all that kind of stuff, and carried on. One of my favorites would be a man by the name of Scruggs, a little Foggy Mountain Breakdown. And this is what I think of when I think of banjo music, but it's carried on. I mean, it's been utilized, like I said, in all kinds of rock tunes as well. And then, of course, there's other bands that are pretty banjo forward, such as Bella Fleck. I don't know if anyone knows Bella Fleck. They're kind of like an intense elevator music almost, but they've got some serious banjo playing, as you can hear here. And as well, Steve Martin, famous banjo player, not just known for his comedy, he's gone on stage repeatedly and performed the banjo with a few outfits. So yeah, that one I found rather shocking. I had no idea that's where the banjo came from. Okay, moving on. Oh, and I forgot my favorite example of the banjo, though, that I have to play a little snippet of. A little TV show. Some of you might remember a little tune called Beverly Hills.
Beverly Hills, Beverly Hills.
Of course, the Beverly Hillbillies. Classic. Anyways, thought that was fun. All right. Next up, I just wanted to dive quickly into a little tune called Jolene. Now, if you don't know it, infamous song by Dolly Parton. And I've always loved this song, man. So, well, first off, I got something else to play for it, which just this. I don't know, this is just silly, but it's kind of interesting. Somebody flipped the old 45 of that tune on to the regular speed of an LP, 33 and a third. And something magical happened. So I used to do that all the time with the records. I would, change the speed, and usually you would end up with like either chipmunk-like sounds or just some really odd monster-like sounding vocals. But something interesting happens when you slow down Jolene, and I'll play a little snippet and you'll see what I mean. Here it is. Just wait for the lyrics to come in.
Jolene, 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 Jolene.
It sounds right. To me, it sounds like it's a male singing in a much slowed down version, but it's really kind of cool, man. Right? And so, some heartbreaking lyrics in this song. Sounds like Dolly's singing to this lass named Jolene that she's gonna steal her man, and it's breaking her heart. Please don't steal my man. He talks about you in his sleep. There's nothing I can do to keep from crying when he calls your name, Jolene. So, anyways, on NPR, a while back there, Dolly Parton actually discussed the impetus to that song. So first off, she referenced a long time ago playing a show, and there was this young, beautiful girl with long, flowing red hair, beautiful skin, beautiful green eyes, and she was looking up at her holding, like an album or something that she wanted an autograph on. And, of course, Dolly says, "Well, ain't you just the purtiest thing I've ever seen? What's your name, girl?" And she said, "Jolene." And Dolly said, "Jolene, Jolene." I said, "That's a pretty name, girl. That sounds like a song. I'm gonna write a song about that." And lo and behold, she did. There was some more influence, though. Obviously, that young girl, no danger. She didn't know Dolly's man, but there was a young banker, and her hubby at the time, back in 1966, Carl Dean, ended up being pretty flirty with this young lady. So that is actually what prompted her to write those lyrics. And she's gone on to say, "I was not having it, and I marched down there and told her right where to go." So, anyways, if it wasn't for that woman, she probably wouldn't have wrote the song and made all that money. So, thanks, Jolene. Yes, thank you. And just as a side note, I found this one kind of crazy. Did I bring it up? I did. This is a little tune called White Rabbit Object. And they actually wrote, years after the fact, they wrote a real gritty response song. So this is Jolene's reply. And it's heavy, but it's pretty nasty. Jolene pretty much says, like, "I'm not sorry for taking your man. You should have been more proactive or something." So I thought that was pretty cool anyway. I like those response songs. Kind of neat. All right. Moving on. Where are we going? Oh, interesting. I also discovered another tune that I think most people will be familiar with. I'll play a little snippet here. Quite a commonly sung song to little chitlins before they go to bed. It's a pretty common lullaby, I think. Something that you might not know, though, is this version that most people know is somewhat abbreviated. It's shortened down. The original, which became known as the state song of Louisiana, thanks to their governor / musician, Jimmy Davis, who took on this song. Now, he has taken ownership for writing it. Turns out that I don't believe is the case. He was able to get the lyrics from somebody else back in the day without too much bother, and I can't remember the actual original writer, kind of lost in history, but anyways, something that I discovered, like I said, was there's far more lyrics to this that you might not be aware of. Actually, it's not such a happy tune at all, even though we sing it like a lullaby often to the kiddies. The original and the original lyrics are far more dark. Let's see if I can find an example of that. One of my favorite duets, a couple called they go by the name of the Civil Wars, do a lot of heartbreak tunes and a lot of real sad, emotive songs, but I love them. They do sort of a original rendition of this song, and it's dark, man. I will reference a couple of the lyrics that aren't generally added when we're singing this to the kiddies. Um, for example, this one: "I'll always love you and make you happy, if you will only say the same. But if you leave me to love another, you'll regret it all someday." Pretty dark stuff. And this one in particular: "You told me once, dear, you really loved me, and no one else could come between. But now you've left me, and I love another. You have shattered all my dreams." Wow, that's hardcore, right? I had no idea. Totally different meaning on the song. So I'll play a little bit of the Civil Wars just because I love them. And they're obviously going to sing it in more of a somber type, depressing manner, but I just thought this was really cool, man.
You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy.
Quite a different feel, as you can see, right? Alright. Moving on to some more randoms. I'm gonna shut that one down. That's depressing, man. Alright. Where are we going here? Oh, we're getting into some weirdness. We're gonna talk about some young men who could only be classified as the rock stars of their day. These were the Castratis. Now, I don't know if anyone knows the Castratis, but this is a weird era of music, of practices that are very strange. Now, the Castratis, like I said, they were like the rock stars of their day. They got recruited by agents at a young age, the same way athletes and stuff are today. They were offered financial support, musical training, and a chance to grab the brass ring of fame and riches. I mean, they would, the ones that succeeded ended up with like international stardom, crap load of moolah, and thousands of adoring fans. So it was a good opportunity for someone, especially if they were in the Poe house, right? Many families would offer up their young men for the chance at a ticket out of this poverty that they were stricken with. But that being said, these Castratis had to pay a pretty dear price. It turned out the practice at that time was to castrate these young men. The thought was if they could do this before puberty hit, that they could maintain their, angelic voices with the high tones, but still having these powerful lungs as they aged and matured. Pretty crazy, but this was common practice. During the 1500s, I mean, there's reports that there was, thousands of these young men getting snipped, full on, and there wasn't very many operas that were performed without at least one castrato. So that's the single version of a castrati. So there you go. Upwards of 4,000 boys in a year would be surgically neutered in order to carry on a singing career, hopefully. And obviously not all of them made it to the big leagues, you know what I mean? Not all of them became famous, so that was a pretty big price to pay, if you ask me. Obviously, they were not going to bear any children, and this is like Renaissance times, right? So pretty strange. But this carried on for quite some time, well into even the 1800s, and but the practice did start to wane a fair bit. The people in the crowd weren't really behind this idea of snipping these young boys. It just seemed weird, but I mean, it continued, particularly in church choirs. It was a common thing. So right into like the dawn of the 20th century. So just as an example, I'm going to play some of the last known castrato, a man by the name of Alessandro Moreschi. So he lived, was born in 1858 and passed away in 1922. But something kind of cool, well, he sang in the Vatican choir, which was huge for those people so inclined. And but one thing that I thought was kind of cool is he actually recorded a number of his arias, which are operatic solos, if you will. Anyone rocking crosswords, that one comes up all the time. But anyways, he recorded a number of them, and so we have preserved those, and you can listen in on these recordings to hear, what the Renaissance peeps in Europe adored so much. So this recording comes to us from about 1904, I believe. So the man would have been, 46? So when I start playing it, you will hear it. It does not sound like a 46-year-old man by any means. Obviously, that procedure had altered his voice forever. But this is a classic tune. You might know it, Ave Maria. So listen, when he starts singing, it's interesting. That's all I can say. Of the man that's belting out those angelic tones here. It's an old black and white of the man there. Not who you think would produce those high tones, right? Pretty crazy, man. Alright, moving on. Where are we going? Oh, yeah, man. This is something I just recently stumbled upon. A little group of old school 50s rock stars and blues stars took a little jaunt over to the weird side briefly in the late 60s. And I don't know how or why I didn't know about this. To me, this was really cool. But if you look early on in the 60s, a number of artists, particularly like all the British Invasion characters, the Stones, Zeppelin, anybody, like even the Beatles, all paid homage to the rock and blues heroes of the 50s. They often would do their own covers and tip their hat to these guys. They're the ones who started it off, man. And, as the 60s progressed, things were changing, man. The counterculture was exploding. There was all these far out characters, Grateful Dead and stuff was getting weird, man. Psychedelia was taking over, man. There was some weird sounds coming out and really experimental music. And so anyways, that brings us to a young 20-something man by the name of Marshall Chess. Now, Marshall Chess was the son of Leonard Chess, the founder of Chess Records. Chess Records belted out all kinds of hits back in the 50s with, everyone from Muddy Waters to, I think Bo Diddley was in there, all sorts. so Marshall was kind of taking over the biz at some point, and he kind of had his finger on the pulse a little more. He was paying attention to what was going on with all these freaky kids, like, you know, getting wild with their music, and he decided to create a whole separate faction of chess records called Cadet Concept or something like that. And, you know, he was like, it was completely designed to get the freaky kids' attention. And first up, he approached none other than the man, the myth, the legend, Muddy Waters. Now, if you don't know Muddy Waters, classic blues man. There's something about his tone on his guitar and the way he sings that just, I freaking love it. It's awesome stuff. But anyways, this is him singing a little mannish boy. And that's, I think, what you would think of when you think of Muddy Waters. But Marshall had approached him, and he said, "Hey man, we're gonna do something totally different. We're gonna get those freaky kids' attention. We're gonna take a dabble into psychedelia." Right? And Muddy was none too excited about this. He did not want a Paisley makeover. He was a blues man, for God's sake. You know, that wasn't his style at all. But he reluctantly, you know, he trusted Marshall. And so into the studio they go. And they produced this album called Electric Mud. And it was actually quite successful for Muddy. He hadn't had any real Billboard, you know, hits in quite some time. And this one rose up through the ranks. So I'm going to play a little snippet of a tune called Herbert Harper's Free Press News. And this, he was definitely speaking to the counterculture. There's a lot of political anti-Vietnam stuff and all kinds of stuff. But you'll hear that psychedelic kind of influence on here. But it's still Muddy and it's really wild. Like psychedelic blues, man. Who knew? So here we go. So Muddy was sort of the first. Like I said, he was rather reluctant. This wasn't his jam. But I think the results were pretty cool, man. Lots of fuzz guitar and wah-wah and all kinds of stuff there. Reportedly, Jimi Hendrix was quite the freak himself, right? He was playing some far-out stuff there. He loved this song. He ended up, he would bring it with him and listen to it pre-show when he was nervous, and this would help him to amp up and get fortified to do a freaky show on stage. So, yeah, man, who knew? Muddy Waters getting all freaky, right? And like I said, others followed. Another man by the name of Howlin' Wolf. Now, if you don't know Howlin' Wolf, infamous blues man. This is one of his called Little Red Rooster, and it's been done and redone, but pretty classic standard blues kind of stuff. He, with the insistence of Marshall Chess as well, went in and put out a whole album of far more auditory weirdness, and he was even more resistant than old Muddy to do this. I mean, this guy was a blues man from back in the 50s, right? He didn't want to rock this action. So he put out a song called Smokestack Lightning, and I'll play a little bit of that. I don't know if we'll get into this one enough, because it progressively gets crazier and crazier, all kinds of echo and weirdness as the song continues. But one thing I found very interesting about this album in particular was the cover of this album. Just bold black letters that state this. This is Howlin' Wolf's new album. He doesn't like it. He didn't like his electric guitar at first either. So I guess they were saying, like, you know, you might not dig this at first listen, but keep on keeping on, because Howlin' Wolf didn't even like his electric guitar when he first picked it up, but he kept going, and I think that was a good thing, right? So, yeah, man. Psychedelic blues, man. I had no idea such a thing existed. Other artists jumped on the bandwagon when they saw that, this was the way of things. Everyone from like Chuck Berry put out like a 19-minute track, which I'm not gonna play, but it was called Concerto in B Good, as in Johnny B. Good, I guess. 19 minutes long, man. So there's all kinds of auditory weirdness there. And one of my favorites from back in the day, a man by the name of Bo Diddley. Don't know him. This is one of his more iconic tunes. So simple yet so awesome. He pretty much plays one single chord through the entire song, but that's an awesome chord, and it works, right? Just with that rhythmical action. But Bo Diddley even jumped on the psychedelia of the time in the late 60s, man, with this tune called Elephant Man. So I'll play a little snippet of that, and you'll hear that it's very different from his original wild stuff, man. It blew my mind. I had no idea that this happened. It makes sense, if you're an artist, you're gonna pay attention to what's going on around you, right? So, that's cool. Like I said, it was a bit of a flash in the pan. Most of these artists didn't carry on with this style of music, but it could have been an epic fail, and I don't think it was. I think these tunes still have some lasting power. So I thought that was pretty cool. All right, man, I'm gonna finish up with one more sort of thing that came to me recently, that, I don't know, I had kind of forgot about this album. Back in like 2000, the songs have been out for a while. I think this album took a while to reach the ears of the world. Kind of a failed to launch initially. But this is an album called Play by an artist by the name of Moby. And we'll get into some stuff about that. But I rocked this album. I really liked it. So it's kind of a sort of techno-esque type songs on here. But something really neat about it was that Moby had used his electronic instruments to create these soundscapes, but coupled with that, he had taken this compilation of field recordings. I can't think of the man's name that was responsible for them, Lomax, something like that. Anyways, he had traveled all over the U.S. Collecting recordings of people performing old gospel tunes and folk music just sitting out on their back porch or wherever, and there's some great recordings in these collections. But anyways, Moby really took a liking to them, so he used samples. So there's these repeated lines from like long ago mixed with this sort of futuristic music. Now, at the beginning of the launch of this album, like I said, it didn't go anywhere. I'm gonna play, here, maybe I'll play this one here, so you'll get that mix of electronic, keys and all the stuff, and then when the sample comes in, you'll hear it's like some old ass tune that would have been forgotten about, and Moby kind of reinvented it. But anyways, the man was just coming off of a total epic fail. He had put out this other album called Animal Rights, and it's like a real heavy, like trashy guitar laden album, and it's pretty bad. He pretty much disenfranchised himself from all of his fans, and then he comes out with this album, which was amazing in my opinion, but I think at that point no one was paying attention to what Moby was doing, so he was pretty dejected, actually thought about just quitting music entirely. And it wasn't until much time afterwards that his manager and him had decided, well, you know what? We're gonna try to cut our losses here. We're gonna whore this album out like nobody's business. They whored it out like no one's whored out an album before. They licensed all of the songs, every last one of them, for movies, commercials, TV shows, you name it. And this worked. I mean, first off, the companies came running. Adidas used a tune, this one here called Memory Gospel, for one of their adverts. One of where are they here? Volkswagen utilized this tune here that got tons of airplay. Very cool song, but it's called Porcelain. That one got played out everywhere. Lots of companies jumped on that one, not just Volkswagen. Intel used another one called We're All Made of Stars. Earlier on, I played a tune called Run On, and that was used by Maxwell House for coffee. I'll give you the run on. Bailey's Irish Cream used this song as well. It was like non-stop. Everybody jumped on it, and then the next thing you know, you can't get away from this album. That's for sure. American Express used this tune for one of their commercials, and that's a cool one. There you go. You can hear that old recording of, some old school song. Someone performing that just way down south somewhere, and yeah, pretty cool, man. So that brings me up to why I kind of was rediscovering this album. I had almost forgotten about it until I was on the interwebs, and I came across a little challenge. There's all these challenges out there over the years. This one's about physical exertion. Sort of two versions. There's one that you can do with pull-ups or chin-ups, and another with push-ups, and it coincides with one of the songs on this album, a little song called Flower. So I'll play that, and you'll once again hear that sample of an old gospel tune. And so as she says, bring Sally up, you'll do a pull-up, and when she says bring Sally down, you'll drop. And then keep up with the tune. And sometimes you just gotta hang there, sometimes you gotta move. And anyway, it is extremely challenging. I can't even make it through half of the song. I think the song runs for about 3 minutes, but I'm working on the push-up version. So same deal. When she says bring Sally down, you come all the way down, hold it until she says bring Sally up, and then right. So that one in itself has become quite a challenge, but I was watching all these military-like dudes, tough guys, just bowing out. They're not able to keep up with it, and I'm like, whatever, man. I'm gonna push for it, and so I'm getting there. Maybe I'll show you guys when I can actually successfully make it through. I don't know. We'll see. Right. Well, I think that's about all the time I got, guys. I am on vacay next week, and I'm going to be away from everything, so down at the beach, I hope, and yeah, connectivity not so great. I will try to put another one of these little things out, but I might have some technical difficulties, so we shall wait and see next Thursday, I guess. But anyways, had a lot of fun jumping into some historical stuff and some auditory weirdness as always. You can expect that from me, but anyways, I will sign off here, and yeah, man, stay cool, everybody. Keep on rocking in the free world.